All right. First rule of this channel, we do not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. This is going to be after waivers for week 10 of fantasy football. This is going to be the proactive waiver wire show where we're stashing those guys a week before everybody else tells you to be picking them up, and we're going to be rolling them the week that they spike. So in this case, I did see the comment about trades, and this is like fantasy football trades, not real life trades, because this is not a real football channel. Uh, in this case, if the trade allows you to upgrade your lineup, especially at the cost of your bench, that's always a good time to do your trades. You got to play a little risky if you want to win your chip. I've never won with a little engine that could teams. I've always won with my juggernaut teams. I've lost to little engine that could teams. I've never been the guy that's been lucky when it comes down to that. Now, so again, if you can roll a couple guys from your bench and you can upgrade your lineup someplace. Also, if you can, if you're upgrading one of your lineup spots by trading a guy in your lineup plus a bench guy to upgrade one spot in your lineup, that's also a good way to do it. If it just looks good to do the trade or just trading to trade, it's usually a bad idea. So unless you absolutely feel like you're upgrading that guy, and a good rule of thumb is kind of break down like you know, if I'm rolling a running back 2 in my running back 2 spot, but I can upgrade that to a running back 1, that's a good trade, right? Or if I'm upgrading my wide receiver 2 spot because I'm trying to Frankenstein that with like some type of wide receiver 3, and I can upgrade that to like a wide receiver 2 or some type of like wide receiver 1. That's also a good trade. But again, if I'm losing another guy in my lineup to do that, like it's not a good idea. Now, the other thing that I will talk about from a fantasy football perspective is you probably heard people talk about like no one's untouchable. That's a lie in fantasy football. If you have some of these guys, more than likely you should not be trading them. Like these legendary outcome seasons, these like super elite guys. It is very unlikely that you're going to be able to get enough capital back unless for some god awful reason they're so stacked, especially on their bench, that they can give you like say a wide receiver 1 or running back 1, something for like an elite level player. Like some of those unicorn tight ends are really not replaceable, and if you're so hard up that you have to start breaking up some of those like legendary elite type guys because you're so far behind, you're probably not gonna win your chip anyway. And hopefully, if you're listening to this channel, like you should be able to have the opportunity to build a playoff team from just the waiver wire. And I've always joked about this with my co-managers about like just wanting to punt the draft and see if I could still win with the waiver wire. And there's been a lot of years that because of injuries and stuff like that, like I've been able to build like playoff teams from the waiver wire. I've never won a chip just doing that, because this is one of the reasons my co-managers they will talk me off the cliff of being too cute for my own good. So like again, like with your trades, you should be able to look at it and go like, does this really help me win my chip? If it's not, then just don't do it. You're probably gonna get burned in the long run when it comes out. All right. Week 11, looking ahead in the future, Saints and Colts are on bye. No one's rolling any Saints if you're trying to win your chip, and everybody's rolling your Colts if you're going to be trying to win your chip. So you got to look ahead and go like, well, who am I going to be slotting into those slots? Because there's a lot of guys for the Colts. They're going to have league winner written all over them. When it comes to defenses in week 11, like the Pats going up against the Jets were in fire sale mode. When it comes to their defense. So again, like never trust Thursday night football, but the Pats would look really good against the Jets right now. Texans and Titans, would be rolling the Texans. I have a bid on the Texans right now to roll them against the Jags, so I can just roll them against the Titans next week if you're into that thing. Ravens and Browns, and I know the Ravens have been all over the place, but like the Browns would be one that I would be looking to actively go after. And if you're wondering about the Redskins and the Dolphins, and probably more the Dolphins going up against the Redskins, Miami did trade a pass rusher, Jalen somebody today. And the other thing is it's a Spain game. So like those are the ones like never trust Thursday night football, never trust those variable games. And that's a variable game. So I'd probably be staying away from that one if you can, even though it does look like there's going to be no Jalen Daniel in that one. It's going to be Marcus Mariota. All right. Moving on to the other news and notes. So those games that we think are going to be those games are going to be high scoring games that we could roll out all of our toys. Sometimes they don't disappoint, unless you were like the Rome owner in this one. Like 3 targets, nothing. I think he had like a pass attempt or something like that on top of that. Now I bring up this Colston Loveland thing, and I'll talk more about him when we get down to the Bears. But in this case, I don't know how many people out there were like, "Hey, this is a really juicy matchup, and Cole Kmet's going to go down." And this one, that's how you got there. So I'm sure there were people that rolled this 26.8 game, and your scoring set is maybe different than mine, but like that's a hard road to be able to predict that one ahead of time. It's probably just as likely that you are going to get like this Colston Outland or Colston Loveland outcome as you were to getting like 0 for Rome in a game where there was like how I think it would finish as like a 48 to 41 or something like that type of game. Out there, and then there is a guy in my main money league that just can't buy a break. He drafted Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor did 5 points this week. On top of that, he has like Jalen Waddle. He has T. Higgins. He has Michael Pittman. I mean, he has all the league winners. He's probably not going to win league at this point because he just can't figure out what wide receivers to roll on a week-to-week basis. He's always picking the wrong guy. And this is one of the things I'll talk about from a fantasy football perspective, like when it comes down to those trades. Like, you put together that really pretty roster and you just don't know how to play or who to roll every week. That's also a reason why you might want to be upgrading one of those spots. And a couple of years ago, and story time, in my main money league, there was a guy that went out there and he hit like all the league winners on that league. And he was cruising. He was hundreds of points ahead on a week by the end of the season. Number 1 seed. I think he lost like 1 game in the regular season. And because he sat on his league winning roster and he didn't make any roster moves, and he didn't go out and get like, I think that was the CMC legendary season. He didn't do anything. And by the end of the season, he went from having like this league winning monster team to not good enough. He got bounced like in the semifinals, like after the bye, just because he didn't upgrade anything. He just said, "Hey, I'm good, but I don't really need to go after any of those like league winners or those elite level guys." And he just had a really really pretty roster. He lost though. So when it comes down to making those trades, that's how I would look at those things. So like guys like T. Higgins, like what you're going to get when you draft your T. Higgins, you're going to get those sub 40 degree days. You're also going to get those monster spikes, and then you got to be rolling those guys in those weeks that it says like, hey, the tea leaves say this is going to be a lot of scoring. You're also going to probably get those Roman Doomsday like over weeks sometimes when there's a lot of mouths to feed in those offenses. All right. So after waiver stuff, what we're all here for, all you sickos that like show up every week to like hear me talk into my microphone. So no news right now on Brock Purdy when it comes to week 9. I would be looking to roll everybody that I can in this 49ers Rams game in week 10 if certain things for the 49ers break in the right direction and guys are healthy, because this could be one of those games that have a lot of scoring going on with it. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey continues to do Christian McCaffrey things. And then wide receiver room, no news on Ricky Pearsall, whatever fuzzy means in real life football land. So you're probably looking at, Jennings and Bourne being those guys. Like if you're going to get cute, probably in your deeper leagues when it comes to those guys. And then obviously Kittle, tight ends can't break your heart, but when Christian McCaffrey is dragging everybody, dragging the team to victory on a week-to-week basis. The other thing is, from a dynasty perspective, I did finally go look this up. So you got Jordan Watkins, the 4th rounder. He gets back-to-back weeks 13 and 12%. So that's just a little interesting stuff that I don't always track during the regular season, but I do like wonder where they are. All right, Bears game, and this was like that massive. Where's it at now? I'm going to be bothered by wondering what the score was in week 9, because it was 47-42. And like Colston Loveland, like 58-yarder late or something, just drags everybody to the victory when it comes down to that. And where's this one? So starting off quarterback room, you get 3 touchdowns from Caleb Williams, and then 53 yards nimbly bimbly. On top of that, DeAndre Swift, he was out with a groin, so we basically like full bell cow Monongahela. 74% snaps, 26 for 176, 5 for 3 for 22 in this game. Let me scroll down here. All the red zone also went to him. You also had Roshan out, and you had Travis Homer doing like 6% snaps, which was a little interesting. I would have thought like he would have picked up like some of the passing down work. And then don't know anything about Britton Brown. He comes in and does 18% snaps, 5 for 37. He does get a 22-yard touchdown on this one. On those 18% snaps that he did, also a target. That's a little interesting from you getting a slightly better Monongahela game. And again, I would have thought that would have gone to Travis Homer. It did not. I don't know anything about Britton Brown at this point. And then talking about like I'll get into right here first. So right now Cole Kmet goes out with a concussion, and that's how you're going to get like potential Colston Loveland. I don't know if you're going to get it. So maybe the Giants is going to turn into a little bit of a scoring festival, and then you're trying to guess how many other weeks that you'll be rolling Cole Kmet or Colston Loveland. Now, I imagine that Cole Kmet's not going to go away in the offense, and this is the problem when you're chasing offenses with a lot of mouths to feed. So again, general rule of thumb from a fantasy football perspective is I want an okay offense with an opportunity funnel. If it doesn't meet those criteria, I got to know what I'm rolling when I'm rolling those guys on a week-to-week basis, because I'm going to get my sub 40-degree days to get my spike weeks on top of it. And sometimes that's how you're going to get, Rome doing 0 right there. 3 targets, because someone else in the offense goes off, and like Colston Loveland in the game. And where was it? Like, if it says how long it was, no, it doesn't. So like, late in the game, I did watch him bouncing off of people, scored like 48-yard or whatever it was to win your game out there. So if you're wondering about that, now the other thing is Luther Burden was out, expecting that we're going to maybe get some type of uptick. We did not. And then Olamine Zacchaeus, he gets the uptick, 64% snaps, 8 for 6 for 58, and does do a red zone tug. I believe it was a red zone tug on top of that. So Loveland, going back to this one, Loveland did have 71 air yards, which is pretty good for a tight end, even on 7 targets, because that's generally, they're not used vertically, but that's what Colston Loveland's going to do. And then my thoughts on this, like, I would imagine you may get an uptick from Colston Loveland. I don't know if you're going to get anywhere near league winner, and you're going to have to probably eat your sub 40-degree days if you're going to be spending on it. So, like, you probably had to miss out on your Gatstons, and, we'll talk about, like, your Tucker Craft. Like, you already probably had other opportunities to be picking up potential league winners. Like, if you were one of those guys that like only rolls one tight end because like everybody tells you to only roll one tight end because they're just not worth it, you probably haven't been stashing some of those other like league winning tight ends that are out there. So like, you probably could have had the opportunity to have like Warren and Tucker Craft to start the season, and you're just gonna be plugging those guys in. Gadsden would have been available. It's like, you got to get to the point where like Colston Loveland's there. There may be a certain amount of spike weeks. I would probably prefer Luke Musgrave over Colston Loveland at this point, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But again with Loveland, maybe he's going to overtake Cole Kmet. I don't think they're going to necessarily do that at this point. Like, you're still going to have DJ Moore. You're still going to have Rome. Zacchaeus is still going to be like lingering at 60% snaps. Luther Burden is going to be eating in there. And then you got to ask yourself, like, how many weeks am I going to be able to predict spike weeks? And then on top of that, how many weeks I'm going to just get general, he's going to get red zone opportunity. I didn't write down any red zone opportunities. That means I didn't see anything to write down when it comes out. So that's how many weeks you're going to have to factor in there. These Green Bay games could go either way. San Francisco might score a little bit. Let's see. The Philadelphia game could go either way. These Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia games could go either way, because maybe you're going to get a little bit of scoring. Maybe they could get like really ugly and dragged into the dirt. Bears have not exactly been consistent on offense. So like, that's all the stuff that I would factor into if you're going to be going after Colston Loveland, other than like, this is this week's shiny thing. That's how I would view that. So it's not that I'm uninterested. I just don't need him in either of my leagues when it comes down to it. So that's how I would view him. So you got to be like behind the 8 ball at this point to be chasing that. And again, I would probably be looking at like Luke Musgrave being the better guy at this point in the season. All right. Bengals, and I just have like matchup shuffling, so I gotta go to Joe Flacco at this point. So like, how many weeks you're gonna get after the bye when it comes to the Bengals at this point? Like, again, like maybe Pittsburgh, this Pats game and this Baltimore game, this Buffalo game, like this stretch of games that you're looking at week 12 through maybe even week 16 is gonna be like really interesting when it comes to the Bengals just being able to light up everybody's fantasy lineups. That's how I look at that. So like, if you're wondering about like Joe Flacco, if he's going to be able to be fantasy relevant over that, like, yeah, like you're looking at multiple weeks where you do multiple touchdown passes, if you're wondering about that stuff. So getting into some of the other things, and then don't have a lot to say, I think, about the rest of the Bengals toys. So right now, see, P. Ryan, dreaded high ankle sprain right now. So that led to Chase Brown doing 96% snaps in this one. If you're looking at that, and then the other thing is, from a dynasty perspective, is not looking pretty good or very good for Taj Brooks. If he can't get into the game at that point, that's where the Bengals probably think of him at this point overall, versus just letting Chase Brown do 90-something% snaps down the line. Now, the other one that I will take my victory lap on would be Yosivas. If you rolled your Yosivas and you got your late touchdown out of him, 84% snaps, 7 for 5 for 66 and a touchdown in a game that I would be rolling him. And then if you're in deep enough leagues that you got to go after like the Bengals wide receiver 3, like, again, week 12 through week maybe 16, does look pretty interesting when it comes to the Bengals and the rest of those guys. All right, don't care about the Bengals tight ends. If you're wondering about that, Bills and Chiefs game, and this was a game I guess the Bills just generally controlled overall. James Cook right here. 3 red zone went to him. 2 red zone opportunities that Ty Johnson did tug on one of them. Did go this way. Ray Davis was generally phased out of the offense on that one. So, like, this is how it's going to go sometimes. If you're wondering about like some of the other guys like Khalil Shakur, he's going to be your PPR scam 40-degree day. That's what he's going to be in the offense. Just like, if you're rolling him, I wouldn't overthink that. Probably not going to win anybody in your leagues. You're probably not going to lose anybody in your leagues if you're going to be going after him at that point. Keon Coleman was at 68% snaps in this game. And then the other thing is I did see like Gabe Davis is healthy now. Going on in the offense. And the only reason why I would bring this up is the rest of the wide receiver usage generally remains consistent. And the only guy that we really need to talk about after all of this is we get to Dalton Kincaid. 35% snaps, they don't care. 6 for 6 for 101 and a touchdown. Yeah, he's their number one, and he's just the guy they're going to bring in and go like, we want him to be the guy in the passing game. If you're wondering about all the rest of that stuff, so like maybe you're going to get a spike out of one of these guys down the line, in particular like Keon Coleman, if you can matchup shop. Maybe you can do that like week 14. Week 15, like maybe there's some weeks where you can roll out some of the deeper shares, but like the pecking order probably at this point, like I would probably be benching Dalton Kincaid in certain games where like I don't think they're going to have him be the guy to win the game, because they're not going to do that, because you got equal and opposite reaction, 48% snaps to Dawson Knox, and then Jackson Haas, the blocking tight end, at 47% snaps. Like, and this is the game that they generally controlled against the Chiefs. So like you do with that, you do that with whatever. You know what I mean? When it comes down to the Bills, Broncos, and I did see this that I wanted to talk about. Like, I didn't even notice that, like, Bo Nix in week 7 did 39.9. Your scoring settings may be different than mine. Didn't even realize that. So, again, like, sometimes you just take your 40-degree day and they're going to, have one of those spike weeks on top of that. When it comes down to it, let's see. And then I just have written down, Texans suck so bad that the Broncos won the game. If you're wondering about that, generally usage for RJ Harvey, 32% snaps remain consistent versus Dobbins. No real usage change between these guys. Batty was at 22% snaps. So like, I don't necessarily see right now that they're scheming anything up for RJ Harvey, anything other than anything else. Like, probably still has the ability to score a touchdown in any given week, but like overall usage, maybe there's a little bit more design stuff when it comes down to it. That would about be my only thought on that. Wide receivers, Cortland Sutton did 129 air yards compared to Troy Franklin's 195. He had 10 targets, slight uptick in snaps. I imagine that's because Marvin Mims was out. I'll just say this real quick. I don't want this guy rolled against me in any given week at this point, just because of usage. 10 targets, 108, 95 yards. Yeah, you could get a massive spike week off of that on any given week. So like if I'm rolling him in like a flex spot, or like I have the type of lineup that I can support him being as like my wide receiver 2, like I would be doing that, because you're this is saying that you're going to get another 23.9 week. It's just going to be an issue of, can you predict that week ahead of time? Maybe Jacksonville week 16, something like that. You might be able to get one of those weeks where you're going to get it. Like, I'm not saying based off the usage that you're going to be able to predict it on any given week. But like, yeah, if it lands, it's going to land, and it's going to be like 40-degree days with massive spike up with like 195 air yards, 10 targets, red zone opportunities. It can all this land on one week when it comes down to it. And to get an idea how ugly the game script was in this one, Adam Troutman was at 73% snaps, if you're wondering. All right. Browns, they were on bye. Dylan Gabriel is supposed to remain the starting quarterback to begin with on this one. And if you're sick enough that you're wondering about Shaquille Shakur, like maybe there's some nimbly bimbly that you'll eventually get out of him, but I the same problems that I saw in college is what he's going to give you in the pros on this one. Didn't see anything about Judkins potentially being out for week 10. Did see that you might get some type of uptick in Dylan Sampson's work, regardless of whether or not Judkins is healthy. That's not going to be surprising, because they kind of, one's the receiving back and one is kind of the thumper. That's not going to be like super interesting to me when it comes down to like, and if you want to roll your touchdown dependent RB2 when it comes to Judkins, you go ahead and do that. Like, you may win your league off of that. That's the luck component of fantasy football. Other things I have written down: Cedric Tillman, he is supposedly going to be back from IR. And the one thing I will say about this, like this would probably, any tracking of Bond this year is probably going to be gone at that point. I'm not really concerned with the wide receivers when it comes to the Browns. They're not going to win anybody in leagues at this point. I'm probably going to lose some people for some leagues. They're still going to be behind David Njoku in this game and Harold Fandon. Those are the two guys I would be most interested in rolling on a week-to-week basis. Not named Judkins. All right. Bucks, they were on bye, and the first thing I have written down in this one, if you're chasing your matchups, is this Week 10 matchup against the Patriots could be like really, really interesting when it comes to the ability to score a whole bunch of points. If you're going to be rolling out your toys out there, I didn't see anything when it comes to Bucky and his injuries at this point, like nothing on him coming out. No news on Jalen McMillan, if I could find him, see if there's any news on this one. No news on him coming out, and then I didn't see anything on Chris Godwin, anything. So like that's just how it's gonna roll at that point, and that's about all I got for the Bucks. All right, cards on Monday Night Football, and this was kind of interesting as I was being distracted watching the ticker because had 3 players, and then hopefully I was gonna win that game, and I did. So Jacoby Brissett, he goes out there, he plays well, they win the game, and then supposedly Kyler Murray is Kyler Murray given 4 to 8 week timetable for foot injury. So I don't know what that means. That wasn't there yesterday when I was breaking all this down. So supposedly he's supposed to be back, and like he's going to be the starting quarterback in this case. So like that's what the rumors were as of yesterday. I don't know if that means that anything's going to change tomorrow, but I also did see, I think it was on the Pat Mack show, that like Kyler Murray's time in Arizona may be over. So like you do all that when it comes down to it, and I imagine that like all the toys are downgraded because when Kyler Murray comes back, like you're hoping that Jacoby Brissett remains the starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. No news on Trey Benson. Our boy Amari DiMercado, 40% snaps, 14 for 79, and then 1 for -1 in the passing game. Got to scroll to where these guys are at. Michael Carter was at 0% snaps in this one. And then you have Bam Knight was at, I think, like 30% snaps right there, or 57% snaps. 9 for 27. I didn't write down any red zone. So, like, that means that, there wasn't any major red zone usage between these guys. When it comes down to it, Marvin Harrison, quarterback plus matchup is how you're going to be able to predict some of that stuff. And then you're going to have to be like, if Kyler Murray comes back, which is not going to be beneficial to you, and then you're going to be able to go like, well, what weeks do I think I can get something more like 10 for 7 for 96 and a touchdown? Ain't going to be Seattle, maybe it's 49ers, maybe Jacksonville. Tampa Bay is going to be really nice. The Rams are a good offense, but they're also a really good defense when it comes down to it. Houston's going to be ugly. Falcons may be all over the place. Week 17, so you're going to get some usage out of that's the Bengals. You're going to get some usage out of Marvin Harrison. But, and here's the but, you're hoping Brissett remains the starting quarterback when it comes down to it. Let's see. Scrolling down here to the Chargers. Right here. So last thing I saw, like Marion Hampton, you're still looking at week 12 bye. If you're wondering about that. And this is one of those things like, fantasy football is a cruel mistress. Like 72% snaps for Kamani Valdell. This was a weird game. I think the Titans scored 2 special teams touchdowns or something like that. Or a special teams touchdown, and I think Herbert threw a pick 6 in this one. So like, this killed me in one of my leagues where it's like, oh, this is a really good matchup, and it just doesn't happen on that one. And then the only thing that I would kind of be tracking between now and week 12 is Jared Peterson. He is kind of a camp guy. This is not the first year. He was with the Redskins a few years back right here. So he is a guy, and I guess like I think it was 2024, they were talking about him potentially making the Chargers roster. So like not surprising. That would be the one thing I would say like maybe makes me a little bit worried because Haskins went on IR with that hamstring. That would be the one thing that I would be a little worried about with as a Vidal owner, is that you're maybe going to get a Jarrett Peterson week at this point before Hampton comes back, if you have the ability to pivot off of Vidal at this point. Because I will tell you, I rolled him week 7, got this negative outcome, went a different direction, missed week 8, put him back in my lineup week 9, and I lost at week 9. So that's just how it goes sometimes in fantasy football. And again, talking about like Rome and the wide receiver room, like overall usage was somewhat consistent with these guys. There's always going to be an odd man out. And then Quentin Johnson, he scores a touchdown. So again, that coming off that offer in week 9. And then Trey Harris, 46% snaps. I'm not really concerned with Keenan Allen being down 37% snaps. Like they're going to have roles in the offense. It's more the game script, and this was an ugly game that was probably closer than they were expecting it to be, and they just didn't need to do anything. I think Cam Warder only had like 21 pass attempts overall in the game. It's just an ugly game overall. And then your league winner in this one, Gadsden, 80% snaps. That's like a season high at that point. 5 for 5 for 68. And then the other thing that makes that really interesting is you get like Conklin, nothing, and Disley was out, and then your blocking tight end Tucker Fisk was at 48% snaps. So you're like full-time starter right now with Gadsden if you're checking all that stuff out. All right, Chiefs right here. So Isaiah Pacheco, to start things out, he was out with an MCL, and I believe they're expecting him to come back after the bye week. That would be week 11. If you're looking at that, you get like pretty close to like full bell cow. Kareem Hunt, 78% snaps. In this one, I didn't write down any red zone, so that gives you an idea how the breakdown went. And then didn't get that uptick with Brashad Smith at 20% snaps. The other thing that was a little interesting to me is like still no Elijah Mitchell. I was expecting maybe you were going to get outside chance that he was going to get the start overall and take over that. You did get the elevation to Clyde, CEH Clyde Edwards-Helaire up to, he did get elevated from practice squad. 3% snaps overall in the game. I don't care about the Chiefs wide receivers that are not named. Where's he at? Rashee Rice in this one. So like the only other one, like Xavier Worthy, like 83% snaps, like 7 targets. You know what you're getting with that one, and the rest of them I don't really care about when it comes down to that. All right, Colts. So they lost to the Steelers. Danny Dimes had 5 turnovers. This will come up again when we talk about the Steelers and what happened with the Steelers in this one. Like I would say, like, I'm not super concerned that Danny Dimes is going to turn back into a pumpkin, but there's always going to be that chance that like that's what he's going to be. That Falcons game right now is going to be like really interesting. I could see like 60, 70 combined points going on in this game between these two teams if they really get fun. If you want to get like really deep into the weeds when it comes to like pulling out guys to be rolling in this game, especially like even if the Colts are good on offense, that means that the Falcons are probably going to have to match that scoring that theoretically could be going on in that game. Let's see. Giddens can remain a healthy scratch in this one overall, so like that gives you an idea about like our potential cuffs. And then let's see, you got to scroll back up. Pittman league winner Josh Downs. I want to remain getting pieces of this offense, especially in games that could blow up. Like he gets a tug in this one, even though I had a fumble lost. Alec Pierce, 91% snaps, 13 for 6 for 115. In your dynasty leagues, I did see this as a pretty good comment by somebody. Is Adonai Mitchell was traded to the Jets today, so that probably means that like long term, Alec Pierce will stay the X when it comes to the Colts. And if this is the offense that the Colts is going to be, that means like from a dynasty perspective, he gets a little bit fun. All right, I got to sit up in my chair. All right, and then moving on to the Redskins, we got a lot of stuff to talk about with the ugly Redskins. So first and foremost, Jane Daniels, a dislocated elbow, and supposedly, like I did see that, like the expectation is he's going to go on IR. Also saw the head coach came out and said, like, yeah, he should have yanked him the drive before. So like, there's an indication of coaching that's going on to lead you to that point, and the Redskins are very disappointing. I did go look up Ja'Cory Crosby Merritt. Our dreams of having a Bill season are just not going to happen. 46% snaps in this one, and I did go and look it up. C-Rod was already mixing into the backfield in the second quarter. It was 28-7 when he did get in, but C-Rod did. Let's see, where's he at? Right there. He did get the touchdown late, and 34% snaps, 12 for 65. Like, so your chances of getting a Bill season, and I'm not going to tell you to drop him, but like he is going to be on the list of guys if certain guys clear through my waivers that I would be thinking about that, because at this point, like Marcus Mariota is going to downgrade all your toys. He is a better, or he's still going to have the ability to be a streamer because of the nimbly bimbly, but overall, like, yeah, probably not good. And then the wide receiver room is also not good when it comes to the Redskins. So like, there's your Scary Terry. Like, who knows when he's going to play again? They elevated former first-round draft pick Treylon Burks to the active roster. I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to slip in and play the same Scary Terry role within the offense. Debo is also not going to be the guy that's going to be able to do that role in the offense. The guy that's doing it right now is Chris Moore, 74% snaps. Like this is a mess. This is what I want to talk about. Luke McCaffrey, collarbone, he's going to go on IR. And then where's it? Jalen Lane, the speed slot, he fumbled in this game up to 63% snaps. Like this is ugly. If you're going to be chasing any of that stuff, so like probably don't care at this point. They're already looking like they got a losing record. I'll just bring that up. They're already not doing well. I'm not going to bring it up because I don't care that much. And at this point, like when are you going to be able to predict that right type of game that you want to be rolling out those guys for them? That's just how it's going to go. So if you're wondering about all that stuff, all right, Cowboys. The only thing I really have to talk about with the Cowboys, or I guess there's two things. So Jaden Blue, I guess, was a healthy scratch, and I guess there's pass blocking issues and missed assignment stuff. That's why it happened. That's what I think I heard. And then the other thing that I saw was slightly interesting was Flanoy. If you're looking at the wide receiver 3, when it comes down to him against matchup talking me, he was the guy at 67% snaps. He did have the tug in this game. If you're looking at all that stuff, all right. Scrolling down to the Dolphins, and I didn't remove some of my notes that I should probably remove at this point. Not a lot to talk about with them. First and foremost, you're looking at an injury to Ollie Gordon on his 20% snaps. Again, that's an ankle injury. You get like 91% snaps from A-Chain at this point. No trade of Jalen Wright, so that would be the one thing that you could potentially talk about is like if Ollie Gordon's going to miss time, hopefully, like if you're really still dreaming of Jalen Wright, you would hope that he would get actually into the mix at this point and take the Ollie Gordon role if Ollie Gordon misses time. The other thing is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine remained somewhat consistent at 67% snaps in this game, but Malik Washington jumped up to 70% snaps. So like this is something to be paying attention to, especially with those Buffalo game coming up, and then you can start matchup shopping. Maybe you get Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. This is like deeper league stuff that you'd be going after your Malik Washington. Would not be surprising at this point. You can start talking about him being like that 80-90% role. And then we can start maybe caring about like some of that stuff, that wide receiver 3 range. Down the line, it's probably not too interesting from most of your redraft leagues having the ability to win your league, unless you're in those like 16-man vampire leagues. All right, Eagles were on bye. No news right now from about Saquon Barkley and that groin injury. Equal and opposite reaction. Stashing your Tank Bigsby and you're stashing if you can't get Tank Bigsby by paying for him, and you haven't already paid for him, like you're just picking up Will Shipley on the cheap and trying to see if you can figure out something on the fly when it comes down to it. No news on A.J. Brown. I didn't even know that they were potentially going to shop A.J. Brown in that hamstring at that point. Like no news on either of those things at this point going on out there. Let's see, scrolling down to the Falcons, and the Falcons are one of those like disappointing teams. Overall, they're going to be like really inconsistent. Let's see. And again, we're going to be rolling out most of our toys with the expectation that this Week 10 game is going to turn into a little bit of a shootout on this one. And then I'll give all you Drake London truthers out there like a good look at like 34.3 98% snaps, 14 for 9 for 118 and 3 touchdowns overall in this game. And then Kyle Pitts I would be rolling him Week 10 overall, like 7 targets on 95% snaps, so like he's full-time player at that one. I think that's about all I got. I think the Falcons are going to be like all over the place this season when it comes to being able to predict any of them when it comes down to it. All right, Giants. We'll talk first with Dart, and you can stare at him at 27 points, 24, 33, 192, or 191. 2 touchdowns, 8 for 56, and a rushing touchdown also in this game. Chicago game looks really pretty. Green Bay game's going to get ugly. Detroit, they should score on the Pats game. Again, like because how the Pats play offense, it's going to get really fun for some of these guys to be rolling them out there. And then this playoff schedule is like that's not particularly good. And I'm a Jackson Dart. I'm especially now in my high school league. I'm Jackson Dart both because Jalen Daniels is down. So you might want to think about your playoffs if you're rolling your Jackson Dart out there. I know everybody got super surprised with Tyrone Tracy doing 44% snaps in this game, and I'll even make it worse. Both of the red zone opportunities went to Singletary on his 56% snaps. It was a red zone carry, a red zone target. So at this point, I'll just say like if I'm shooting for 40-degree day, and the possibility that you're gonna get some type of goal line red zone touchdown, it would be Singletary. if I'm shooting for some type of ceiling and we're looking at like Sharps and Kenneth Walker, it would still be Tyrone Tracy. This may be like 1 week. It would not also be surprising that this is going to remain somewhat consistent when it comes down to these guys. Again, about the only guy I probably really want to be rolling in this offense at this point would be Jackson Dart, and I think it's going to be fun up until that playoff schedule. All right, and I don't have anything to say about anybody else. Oh, except for the tight ends. This is deeper league stuff. So Daniel Bellinger was out with that neck, and then our boy camp pipe guy Thomas Fedone was at 19% snaps. That's just something to be paying attention to if you're in your deep enough leagues. He's the camp pipe guy. I did watch some of the one-handed catches in camp that was maybe a little bit interesting on him being like a super athletic second tight end. Probably not relevant to fantasy in any way, shape, or form other than paying attention to it. All right, Jaguars, a lot of stuff to talk about with the Jaguars. We'll talk about the running backs real quick. So 57% snaps, Travis Etienne. 5 red zone went to him, and here's your but on that one. Tootin, 25% snaps, 2 red zone went to him, and guess what? He got the tug. So if you're chasing those guys, those split backfields. LaQuint Allen, 28% snaps in this one. So that's how you're going to go. That's what's going to really be hurting your Travis Etienne shares. Brian Thomas did not get traded, whatever. Whatever's going on with his ankle, he's down to 65% snaps. That's something to be monitoring. They did go out and trade for Jacoby Myers from the Raiders. This is probably pretty big news, and I'll get to that in a second. The other thing that happened last week is Travis Hunter went down with a knee injury. He went on IR, so that's like 4 games at this point. Diami Brown, concussion. He was only at 60% snaps in this game overall. So what it did look like, our boy Parker Washington had the ability to be like week winner, especially coming up with some of the matchups, like not Houston. Houston's a pretty good team, but like some of the other ones we could talk about. Potentially him being able to win you some weeks when it comes out there, Parker Washington. I don't think it's going to happen now. I do think that he may end up being a full-time starter for the foreseeable future. Jacoby Myers is probably pretty big because that he's the wide receiver 2 type PPR scammer guy. And I'll bring him up so we can talk about him. This is going to be like the type of guy that they actually would need in the offense to keep the offense moving. Is a big slot type Jacoby Myers. It's almost like they were trying to use Travis Hunter in this role early. So even if and when Brian Thomas comes back, he can stay at the X. You're looking at Jacoby Myers being able to play like slot flanker. Patrick Washington can do, or Parker Washington can do kind of whatever they need within the offense. So that would be like the 3 guys that I could see going on. But like probably going to upgrade Jacoby Myers, and like you're looking at like 10 potential targets a game going to him. How he would fit into the offense. I think it's a really good move for the Jaguars. From a fantasy perspective, I don't know if it's going to win you any leagues, but it's probably going to be like really interesting overall if you're just like hunting at your 40-degree days when it comes down to it. All right. And Jets in this one. So again, they traded like Sauce Gardner and defense tackle Quinton Johnson or whatever in this one. And then let's see, no Breece Hall movement on this point. So like I guess is unlikely to be traded. He did not get traded at this point. Overall, let's see, scrolling down here, they sold everybody on defense. I imagine that the team is pretty checked out at this point. So if you're going to be chasing some of these guys, and then no news on Justin Fields at this point when it comes down to it. And then they did go out and get Adonai Mitchell. This is probably more of a dynasty stash if you're wondering about Adonai Mitchell. I don't know how much he's going to be integrated into the offense after like 1 week. Maybe week 11 is going to get a little interesting if you want to trust like the quarterback situation when it comes to the Jets. Probably like a long-term thing. It might be like really interesting to have him and Garrett Wilson together on the same team if you have like a functional quarterback play, but like probably not going to be anything that's going to really be relevant from a redraft perspective. Probably going to be more interesting from a dynasty perspective if you're going to be chasing that stuff. All right, let's see. Going back to the Jets, and I don't think I have anything else. I probably still not going to be super high on Mason Taylor. Again, like Luke Musgrave would probably be more interesting to me if I'm going to be chasing potential unicorns. Lions, surprisingly close loss to the Vikings. We'll talk about the Vikings later. And then our boy Isaac Tesla only down to 5% snaps. That's not a good sign on that one. Packers, ugly loss to the Panthers in this one. So, again, there's a lot of stuff to talk about with them. So, Josh Jacobs is supposedly dealing with that calf, only 58% snaps. 2 red zone opportunities. He tugged on his 2 red zone opportunities. Wilson also had 2 red zone opportunities in this game. He did not tug on them, right? 32% snaps in this game when it comes to Wilson. I think I have some of the other stuff is not right, but he did have 2 red zone opportunities. And then Chris Brooks was also in the game at 17% snaps. You see 2 for 2 for 24. Probably has that brick wall in the passing game when it comes down to it. Now, before we move on, I'll just go over Tucker Kraft, like ACL done for the year, placed on IR. I got to talk about Luke Musgrave here in a second. We'll talk about the wide receivers first and foremost. So Matthew Golden's shoulder, he was down to 37% snaps. To get an idea of some of the other guys that were going on, so Wicks was out. Heath was at 42% snaps, equal and opposite reaction. Savion Williams was up to 29% snaps. That's a season high because now you have the injury to Golden. Overall, no news right now that I could see on Jaden Reed, and it says like on Sleeper Worth rostering. Remember, he's probably going to play like the slot within the offense. I would imagine you're going to get, where's he at? Christian Watson, 66% snaps. And then he had 112 air yards in this game on that 66% snaps. He's probably going to play that sacrificial X / clear out guy. This is going to be what his role is going to be in the offense going forward. So that the slot work, the slot flanker work, and then you're going to have like the bully and Romeo Doubs. He's the main beneficiary to the Tucker Kraft injury. Probably would go out and buy him if someone doesn't realize what they got. He had a red zone opportunity in this one. Let's see. He also had 116 air yards, 92% snaps, 10 for 7 for 91. So if that's the guy I've been chasing, remember he was already red zone target guy when it comes to not being Tucker Kraft, and those vacated targets are probably going to go to him when they get in the red zone. So chasing touchdowns is a good way to win your league. It's a good way to lose your league. That's what I would think overall of Dobbs at this point. And then, Reed, Golden, whoever is going to be the number 3 within the offense down the line, whoever comes back, but it's going to be Dobbs. And then the slow but sure uptick when it comes to Christian Watson, probably be closer to full-time player. Like he might cap out like 70-80% snaps down the line. So I can say all of that so I can talk about the rest of the tight ends, not named Luke Musgrave, in this offense. So like John Fitzpatrick was only at 28% snaps. You see this relatively in line with the rest of the guys. He's probably the blocking tight end when it comes to the Packers. And then you can see the uptick when it comes to Luke Musgrave at 46% snaps with the injury Tucker Kraft. So why I got to bring all this up? Luke Musgrave is athletically better than Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft is better at football. You're going to have some vertical work that Luke Musgrave can do because he's faster. He's like 4.5 guy that Tucker Kraft can't. So you're going to get that within the offense. He's likely may not get like the full Tucker Kraft treatment when it comes to like the blocking and the snaps. You see Tucker Kraft get like hover around 90% snaps. He may be closer to like 70 to 80% snaps, and they may bring on other guys to block. He's not type the blocker. Now, as a rookie in 2023, he got drafted ahead of Tucker Kraft. Now, as a rookie, he was dancing around the guy. He beat out Tucker Kraft for the job because of draft capital, so I can see that remaining somewhat consistent. He's not bad at football. So I can imagine you're going to get a certain amount of spike weeks out of Luke Musgrave. They may be non-predictive. Now you're matchup shopping and saying like, hey, when would be good weeks? Can I get enough useful weeks out of Luke Musgrave? Baltimore, yes. Chicago twice, week 14 and week 16, yes. Maybe not Denver. That week 13 against the Lions, in Detroit, probably. And maybe week 11, you could talk about like that maybe turning into a shootout. Packers have been very inconsistent all over the place, but I may get enough of league winning type weeks to justify rolling Luke Musgrave to get those 40-degree days or sub 40-degree days on top of that attached to this offense, vacated opportunities. That's how I would view it going forward down the line. But there's a guy that I really would want to go out and get right now, it would be Dobbs within the offense. All right. Panthers. So again, ugly win against the Packers, and you see like 20 pass attempts in this win because they're going to put all their chips on Rico Dowdle going forward, and that would give you a pretty good indication of how things are going to roll. So Chuba Hubbard was at 22% snaps of the game. He did have 2 red zone opportunities, 1 carry and 1 target in this one. So you're going to get a certain amount of Chuba touchdown vulturing if this remains consistent going on down the line. Now, Rico Dowdle in this one, 72% snaps, 25 for 130, 2 touchdowns in this game. One of them was a red zone tug. Chuba got the first shot, and then Rico came in and just cashed it on the next one. And then they're 3 for 2 for 11 in the passing game. And I did see that, like, on Twitter, that like one of his catches was a more or less a choice route that he won. So like there is a possibility that he could get, again, the running back one full usage in the passing game. Tet in this one, he did have a red zone drop, or an end zone drop, I should say. You know, if it hits your hands, it's your job to catch it when it comes down to it. Leggett was down to 25% or 50, or not 25. He was down to 55% snaps in this one. I don't know what the questionable tag is. I believe it was a concussion that he was evaluated for and brought back into the game. I'm not exactly sure when it comes down to that one. And then Coker was at 66% snaps, but again, like I don't even think that unless you can predict the game where they're going to have to throw, and if Rico's good, there may be none of those games at this point. But there are some games that we talk about, like potentially rolling out some of your Panthers catchers or pass catchers like Tet. Maybe you're going to get Atlanta, 49ers, the Rams. Maybe there's some opportunity that the Saints game are going to get really ugly for both these teams. Tampa Bay probably is going to be a game that like maybe wanting to roll out your Tet shares. It does look like that. When you're wrong, you're wrong. And I'm talking about myself. When it comes to Tet, Jimmy Horn remained consistent at 24% snaps. Tight ends I don't care about. All right, Pats. Let's see. So I just have this projects to be a good one when it comes to the Pats against Tampa Bay. Two good offenses that throw a lot and they move the football. So when it comes down to that, so I want to be rolling out who I can. No news right now on Ramondre Stevenson and that toe. I did see like the fantasy doctor guy was talking about like at least was going to miss this game. And then after that, it just becomes on how bad it is, how many more weeks he's going to miss after that. On top of that, we got the exact usage that we thought we were going to get out of Travion on this one. 75% snaps, 14 for 55, 6 for 4 for 32. Primarily it's the passing game stuff. Did get a red zone opportunity, but, and here's your but, Jennings right here, he got the one red zone opportunity on his 25% snaps and cashed it in from 3 yards out. So like if Henderson does not score probably outside of the 10-yard line, he ain't going to get the guy when it gets down there. And then obviously you have Drake May being goal line fullback if he wants to do that in that case. Now, the other thing is Kayshon Boutte, he was knocked out with a hamstring at 26% snaps. Did not get the uptick to Stephon Diggs, 60% snaps, relatively inclined with what he did before. Pop Douglas was only at 25% snaps, or 24% snaps. 6 for 4 for 100 and touchdowns. So like the overall wide receiver usage is relatively consistent. You see Matt Collins there at 63% snaps. And then Chisholm was at 6% snaps. So the vacated opportunities did not go to Chisholm. The vacated opportunities did go to Kyle Williams. So 46% snaps. There is a possibility that you're going to get Kyle Williams going directly into the Kayshon Boutte role, and that becomes interesting week 10 Tampa Bay if you are cute enough to go chase that and maybe get like a Boutte type, like 1 to 2 touchdown type of game. If you get the 1-to-1 replacement on that one, I don't think it's going to go to Diggs is probably the big thing that I would talk about that one. Now, if buts and maybes when it comes to Henderson, if Ramondre misses another week, remember, vacated targets tend to go to running backs first, and that would mean that like it would be another week with Travion Henderson in a plus matchup if everything goes in the right direction when it comes down to it. All right. Raiders, they lost a heartbreaker to the Jags real quick. So if you're wondering, Genty was up to 91% snaps. It was a close game, so that's all you got to know on that one. With Myers being traded in this one, there's a little bit more to talk about real quick. So I actually go to tight ends real quick. So Brock Bowers. Okay, we'll do Brock Bowers, and you get your victory lap. 81% snaps, 13 for 12, 127, 3 touchdowns. The more interesting thing to me on this one is Michael Mayer was at 83% snaps in this one, 7 targets. So wide receiver room, you get 4th round draft pick Deontay Thornton. He was a healthy scratch, so he goes from 81% snaps week 2 to being a healthy scratch at this point, and then 86% snaps the week before that. Trey Tucker remains consistent, 97% snaps. So like he's gonna stay probably in like that Z position, Z slot, and then maybe you're gonna get Thornton to go back into that X position with this one. Beck, he gets zeroed in this game because you also did get Myers in his last game with the Raiders at 89% snap. So why Michael Mayer becomes important is because if they stay in primarily 2 tight ends, because that's probably their best personnel grouping, you're looking at only 1 wide receiver coming in to replace Jacoby Myers. And maybe it's going to be Beckett at this point. It also could be, where does it say? Deontay Thornton coming back. And then you also have, I want to say, the possibility that you're going to get Tyler Lockett stepping into that position. He's at 30% snaps in the game. But the main thing is I just don't think that, like, outside of maybe you're going to get Beck, and there is a redundancy between Beck and Jacoby Myers within the offense. Maybe you're going to get that when it comes down to that. Like, the more interesting thing is Brock Bowers. Like, this does remain consistent one way or another, that, like, he's going to be operating as the guy that can do what he did last week again. That's probably the long and short of what I would get down to with all that stuff. All right, Rams, they kind of blew out the Saints. It was a little bit closer. I think it was like 20-10 in the first half before they scored 2 touchdowns. In the second half, put the game away, so I don't really care about some of the snap shares when it comes down to these guys. Puka Ribbs only at 49% snaps, but before he went out, he was 8 for 7 for 95 and a touchdown. If you're wondering about all that stuff, and then don't really care. The uptick in Ferguson, I should talk about really quick. 30% snaps, 3 for 2 for 54 in this game. Was expecting that you're going to get the uptick from him, but that was from like week 5. But it was also a blowout in this game. And then the other thing is I did see that Blake Corum was alternating with Kyren Williams. And I went and looked at the box score, and that's exactly what was going on this one. So first and foremost, all the red zone went to Kyren Williams. He was at like 69% snaps in this game. Blake Corum was at 28% snaps, but they were alternating drives in this one. So the Blake Corum drives were short drives, and then the rest of the Kyren Williams were the ones that they scored touchdowns on. So, like, yeah, it may be a split backfield. So, like, if you want to be selling Kyren Williams, I would understand that. And at this point, like, yeah, there's no competitive league where Blake Corum should be on the wire at this point, because, like, you're probably getting full bell cow Blake Corum. If Kyren Williams goes down, you're also getting the opportunity at any given week that he can give you a touchdown 40-degree day, just because if they're alternating drives at that point. All right, Ravens. Nothing to talk about with the Ravens. I don't care. Everything remained relatively consistent if you're wondering about that stuff. Saints, I don't also care. And this one, like, Tyler Show, I guess, was not quite as bad as I thought he was going to be, but, like, he was not good either. If you're chasing anybody, so when it comes to the Saints, so Rashid Shaheed, he was traded to the Seahawks. I'll talk about them later in this one. And then if you're wondering about who's going to end up vacating those or taking over those targets, those vacated targets, when it comes to the Saints, I don't care. It may be Cooks, it may be Vele, it may be Trey Palmer if he ever comes off IR. My dark horse guess may be Mason Timpton. They're very similar. Like, Mason Timpton is a 4-3 guy. I could maybe see him getting that vacated role when it comes to Shaheed. That may be why they traded him to the Seahawks, if you're wondering about all that stuff. Like, but again, I don't know how much you're going to be winning your leagues if you're going to be chasing any of that stuff. All right, Seahawks. Running backs, I know we all care about the running backs first and foremost. Kenneth Walker, 57% snaps. Both the red zone opportunities went to him. It did not go to Charbonnet in this one at 35% snaps. Darnold threw 4 touchdown passes in this game. I believe it was 4 touchdowns. He threw 4 touchdown passes. And then A.J. Barner scored a rushing touchdown at tight end. We did not get the uptick for Arroyo. It stayed relatively consistent at 43% snaps, even though he did score a touchdown in this one. So with Cooper Kupp being out, right there, you did get the bump when it comes to Torrey Horton at 43% snaps. He did have 2 touchdowns in this game. So, like, maybe you could talk about, like, certain leagues, like, getting cute and rolling your Torrey Horton shares. Now with Rashid Shaheed coming in, this is where it kind of gets, like, interesting to me, and I'll go back to the Saints so I can talk about Rashid Shaheed. If Cooper Kupp remains injured and his snap shares were already going down, I would imagine that Torrey Horton would have been the guy to play, like, the big X outside of JSN. In this case, when it comes to the offense. Now, you can look at JSN for the rest of the season with Rashid Shaheed coming in 2 ways. There's 2 ways to look at it. One is a guy like Rashid Shaheed will pull coverage away from JSN, and he's going to go from, like, league winner, elite, legendary outcome type of season to like another level of absurdity because you're going to have a guy that like legitimately can pull coverage on every given play and just let, the Seahawks do what they were doing with JSN. The other thing, and here's your but or your maybe or the other side of that coin when it comes to Rashid Shaheed, it means that there is a legitimate guy that will take certain opportunities away from JSN. So at this point, like if you are either looking at going after JSN or trading your JSN, like selling high when it comes to JSN, I could see either one being a valid option down the line because like Rashid Shaheed can do some special things on a football field that I do think would open up the offense a little bit over your Torrey Horton that may be slightly not as professional at this point when it comes to like what Rashid Shaheed can do in the offense. So that would how I would look at it. I probably would not be trading JSN at this point, but and this is the but because of the channel when it comes to the theory behind it. If someone comes along and offers me that high end wide receiver one and something else to go along with it, I would probably consider it, which is not something I would do before this trade overall. This would be very interesting. Probably does not change Rashid Shaheed's limited value from a fantasy football perspective, but it may end up downgrading or upgrading JSN. I think it's a coin flip on a week-to-week basis when it comes down to that. And I imagine you're probably not going to get the consistency out of JSN if it does happen overall. You're probably going to get some weeks that Rashid Shaheed's going to get home, which means that, like, again, how many mouths to feed in the offense, when it comes down to JSN, if that makes sense to anybody out there. All right. Moving on to Steelers. So, like, snap shares and usage is going to be all over the place because, again, I talked about, like, Danny Dimes had those 5 turnovers, 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles. So the rest of the usage is probably not that interesting. You go to DK Metcalf. They just cruised kind of and were able to pull it out late, because they were on cruise control. So, like, DK 4 for 2 for 6. That's all they really needed him to do in this game. And then Dwayne Washington was the tight end. And I don't care about any of these guys because of the offense. 66% snaps, 6 for 4 for 43 and 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, I just don't think you trust anybody in this offense not named probably right here. Jaylen Warren is probably the only guy that I really want to be rolling on a week-to-week basis. Downgrade DK probably to boom bust land if I paid for him, something like that. Like, probably don't want to be rolling him on any given week. And then did get a Caleb Johnson sighting, 8% snaps in this game. Did have a carry and a target. All right, Texans in this ugly game because, and I actually wrote down in my notes if you're wondering, because I'll just bring this up. So Britus Brooks got in the game early, had 2 red zone opportunities from the 1-yard line, did not cash those in, right? Nick Chubb did have 1 other red zone opportunity in this game. They don't care about your fantasy lineup. Not only that, at this point, when it comes to the Texans and how they're doing everything on offense, I don't think they even care about winning at this point. It's pathetic. In this one. So wide receivers, Nico's back. He does 11 targets, and that's with CJ Stroud getting knocked out with a concussion, and then you get Davis Mills going in. And then, again, obviously, the Texans doing everything they can not to win the football game. Jaden Higgins down to 48% snaps from his 83% snaps. Xavier Hutchinson, 63% snaps, was in line with how he's been used. Jalen Noel all the way down to 15% snaps because they don't want to win football games at this point. And when it comes down to that, and I think that's all I got when it comes to them. And then Dalton Schultz, because I was clicking through, looking at all this stuff, on Sleeper says, emerging as stable target earner in Houston. If you're rolling a guy like Dalton Schultz, you're in a really deep league when there's no one available, or you're just really not trying to win your league, just like the Texans are not trying to win football games. And then no news on Cade Stover potentially coming back at this point down the line, if you care about any of that stuff. All right, Titans. And we'll talk about Cam Ward, and you see like 21 pass attempts in the game against the Chargers. So like you're chasing some of that stuff down the line. Tony Pollard was at 62% snaps in this one. All 3 red zone opportunities go to him. And I'll just say, like, I have heard all the rumblings about Tajay Spears, and without a Tony Pollard injury, it's just not going to happen. It would be nice if we get league winner Tajay Spears, but without injury, it's not going to happen. And the offense is still not bad or not good enough. Like, there's just not going to be enough scoring opportunities for it to matter. Calvin Ridley was still out. Tyler Lockett is with the Raiders. Ao Minor was down to 64% snaps. I didn't see why. Van Jefferson was up to 83% snaps, and then Dyke or Dick or whatever, 87% snaps in this game. If you're wondering about all that stuff, but again, only 21 pass attempts, so it probably does not matter. Don't care about the tight ends. And then finally, to finish all this stuff out with the Vikings, you're looking at surprise victory over the Lions in this one, and then I didn't go look at the JJ McCarthy tape because I didn't care because the stat line says I don't need to care about it. 14 for 25, 143, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 9 for 12, and a rushing touchdown. On top of that, fumble not lost. So however they were able to win this game, it was not because of JJ McCarthy. And then I don't care about anything else. And then Aaron Jones was at 42% snaps in this game. I don't know. It says shoulder in this one. 9 for 78, 2 for 20. Probably, again, more of the upside stuff, but Jordan Mason, 60% snaps, got the 1 red zone opportunity, went to him. And again, with J.J. McCarthy out there, I don't care about like anybody, including Justin Jefferson is probably wide receiver 2 rest of the season, as long as it's J.J. McCarthy. So if you care about any of that stuff, and nobody else I really care about rolling when it comes to the Vikings. So anyway, that's about all I got for after waivers this week, and see you next weekend maybe.